to this video. We will start this video with the scenario where the team was working on a client's AWS environment. The client team and the technical team were in a different time zone, is that Eastern Standard Time Zone and Indian Standard Time Zone respectively. The client's IT team had provisioned an EC2 instance, basically a single instance for multiple team members for the development. And they had opened port 22 and port 8000 as a part of the EC2 instance security group. Now, in order to request any changes like opening an additional port, the technical team has to wait until the client's infra team is available due to the time zone difference. Hence, it becomes a blocker for the technical team. So this was the background and the scenario, and here is the problem. So someone from the tech team is leveraging port 8000 for running the front-end application, and now the data engineer or the data scientist want to run Jupyter Notebook on the same EC2 instance to do some data analysis or some sort of EDA. At the same time, the team does not want to wait and waste time for the infra team to be available and open additional ports so that they can run the Jupyter Notebook on some different port, since port 8000 is already in use. Also, due to obvious reasons, the task cannot be done locally. So the only port which the team can leverage is port 22. So in this video, I will take you through how to run Jupyter Notebook on an EC2 instance on, let's say, port 8181, and then route the traffic via SSH to your local host port or your local machine port. So ideally, your Jupyter Notebook will be running on EC2 instance, and you will be able to access the same notebook on your local machine via a technique called SSH tunneling or SSH port forwarding. And here port 8181 is not whitelisted within the security group. So enough of theory and the background. So let's jump to the AWS Management Console and spin up an EC2 instance. So navigate to EC2 Management Console, click on Launch Instance. Provide the name. I will say dev. Within OS images, I will select Ubuntu. Within instance type, I will select t2.large. Within key pair, I will select an existing key pair, that is Flask, which I already have on my local machine. Within network settings, I will create a new security group where I will only allow SSH traffic from anywhere. And on top of that, we are not going to open any port. So we will only have port 22 as an whitelisted port as a part of our security group. Within storage, I will say 15 GB. And then once you are done with this configuration, click on Launch Instance. The instance is in pending state, so let's wait till our instance is up and running. So while we are waiting, I would like to request you to please like and share the videos, and please subscribe to the channel if you have already not subscribed. I really appreciate your support. So now, since our instance is in running state, so let's select that instance and click on security. Let's quickly have a look at the inbound rules. So here, as you can see, we only have port 22 as a part of our inbound rule, which basically allows traffic from anywhere on port 22. As a next step, we are going to log in or SSH into this instance. So for that, we will need public IPv4 address. So let's copy this IPv4 address. Open your terminal and execute a command, that is SSH-I. -I stands for identity file, followed by the path of your PEM file or your key pair file, that is flask.pem in my case, followed by the username of your remote machine. So the default username is Ubuntu. But in case if multiple users are created on your remote machine, then you need to enter the username which is provided to you. But in this case, the Ubuntu will be the default username. So that is Ubuntu @ your IPv4 address, that is your public address. And once you are done with this command, press enter. Yes. So here we have successfully logged in into the EC2 instance or our remote machine. So let me clear this. Now as a next step, we are going to configure this instance to install and run Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook. So for that, the very first command that we will execute is sudo apt-get update. As a next step, let's check Python version, that is Python 3 -V. So this remote machine has Python 3.10 pre-installed, so we are good there. As a next step, we have to install the Python package manager, that is pip. So the command for that is sudo apt install python 3 pip -y. So why we need Python package manager? It's because we will be using pip to install Jupyter Lab on our machine or on the remote machine. But before we go ahead and install Jupyter Lab, we will configure the virtual environment. And then we will activate that environment, and post that we will install the Jupyter Lab package. So here we have successfully installed Python package manager. As a next step, we will install sudo apt install python 3.10 -venv -y. venv is a module used to create and manage virtual environments. Hence, we will be using venv to create our virtual environment for Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook. So here we have successfully installed venv, that is short for virtual environment. And to create the virtual environment, the command is python 3 -m venv followed by the directory name in which you want to configure or install your virtual environment. So in my case, I will simply say pyenv. Here we have successfully created the virtual environment, that is within pyenv. So now let's activate this virtual environment, and the command is source pyenv bin activate. Once we have activated the virtual environment, we will execute a command to install Jupyter Lab, that is pip3 install Jupyter Lab. The Jupyter Lab package is installed successfully. As a next step, we are going to configure a password for Jupyter Lab, and the command for that is Jupyter space lab space password. It should be SS. Now here you need to enter or configure the password. So I will do that. So this password you will need while you will load the Jupyter environment via URL. So once you have configured the password, we are good to execute the command, that is Jupyter -lab -no browser. So basically with -no browser, we are saying that prevent the opening of the default URL in the browser. And then if you want to run this command as a root, then you can pass the allow -root option. Okay, and then if you want to run the Jupyter Lab on specific port, then you need to add --port space the port number on which you want to run the Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so in my case, I want to run it on 8181. And then once you are done with this, press enter. Now as you can see, the Jupyter Lab is in running state, and it is running on localhost 8181, which is on our remote machine. Now if we try to copy this public IPv4 address and paste it in the URL followed by the port number on which the Jupyter server is running, that is 8181, and if you try to access this, then we will not be able to access it because we have not whitelisted the port 8181 as a part of our security group. Okay, and at the same time, we do not have a permission to whitelist the port 8181. So in that case, what we are going to do is we are going to use a technique called SSH Port Forwarding in order to access the Jupyter Notebook over port 22. Okay, so let me close this. Let's go to the terminal. Let me open a new instance of the terminal. So here we are going to execute a command to redirect all the traffic from the remote machine to our local machine. So the command is SSH -i, that is for identity file, followed by the identity file name, that is flask.pem in my case, followed by the username of the remote machine, that is Ubuntu, @ IPv4 public address, that is 34.229.57.136 of the remote machine space hyphen L option, okay, followed by the port number that is 8000 colon localhost. I will explain this option in a bit. Let me finish this command colon 8181. So here hyphen L option is used to bind a port on the local machine with the remote port on the remote destination IP address or remote host. Okay. So here what we are saying is that forward everything that is coming to localhost port 8000 to remote host port 8181 via SSH. And then we are going to also add one more option that is hyphen N. Now hyphen N option tells that do not execute this remote command. So ideally if we execute this command, then we will basically log in into our remote machine, right? And we don't want to do that. We simply want to map this port and we simply want to do port forwarding, and that's all. So ideally hyphen N option will tell do not execute a remote command, and as a result it will not log you into the remote machine via SSH. And hyphen N option is simply useful for forwarding ports. But I will show you if I do not pass hyphen N, then what will happen. So here I am not passing hyphen N, and if I press enter, then I will basically log in into my remote machine. As you can see, right? Ubuntu at the private IP address. Now I do not want to log in into this instance. I simply want to do SSH port forwarding. So if I exit from here, I will clear this. And now if I execute the same command with hyphen N, then it will not execute the SSH command, right? If it will simply do the port forwarding. So as you can see, it is basically not logging into the remote machine, but the command is running as a part of the port forwarding, and that's all. We will also see how we can execute this command in the background so that we can use this terminal session for other purpose. So if I go to the browser and simply type in localhost colon 8000, and if I press enter, then as you can see, I'm able to access the Jupyter server. Now here you need to enter the same password which you have configured while executing Jupyter Lab password. So I will enter that password, login. So now as you can see, I'm logged in into the Jupyter Lab, and here is my interface. So here you will also be able to see the pyenv directory that we have configured or created for the virtual environment on the remote machine. Now you can simply go ahead and create the notebook. You can say import request, for example. You can also install the packages. Let's say exclamation pip3 install numpy, and you can run this. So this is installing numpy in your virtual environment, and then you can import numpy as np and so on, right? So basically we are executing or we are accessing the Jupyter server on our local host, but actually this server is running on our remote machine that is on 8181, right? So this is the beauty of SSH port forwarding. So without explicitly opening the port as a part of our security group, we can simply use port 22 to basically route the traffic and map the local host and the remote ports. Now as a next step, for example, if I close this session, right, then this will stop running and then I will not be able to access the Jupyter Lab. So in that case, what we are going to do is we are going to run this Jupyter command on the remote machine in background. Okay. So now as you can see, as soon as I close this or stop this Jupyter Lab, here you start to see the error. It says connection failed, connection refused, because there is nothing running on port 8181, right? So this is failed. So let me stop this as well. Okay, now coming to the remote machine terminal. Now here, instead of simply running the command, we will use no hop. So no hop is a short for no hangups. So basically no hop will run a command immune to hangups, and the output of that command will be returned to nohop.out file if not specified. So whatever logs that you are seeing while executing the Jupyter Lab command, so all those logs you will not see on the terminal, but instead of that, you will see all that logs into a file that is nohub.out. So we will say nohub and then followed by the same command, that is Jupyter -lab -no browser allow root. So allow root is basically nothing but you are saying that run this command as a root user. And then we will define the port, that is port 8181. At the end of the command, we will say ampersand. So the meaning of the ampersand is that ampersand will make the command run in the background. Okay, so this command will be running or it will get executed in the background. And once it basically start executing this command asynchronously, you will instantly get the access of the prompt to execute other commands. So as soon as I press enter over here, as you can see, now I can execute other commands as well. Now if I do ls, then you will be able to see nohub.out, and if I do tail nohub.out, then all the logs you will be able to see as a part of this nohub.out file. Okay, you can also configure like to which file you want to write this, right? But if it is not configured, then by default it will write to nohub.out. Okay, so basically now our Jupyter server is running in the background. Now what we will do, let's execute this mapping or the port forwarding command again. Okay, I will say enter and let's reload this. So now as you can see, again it's up and running. I will select the kernel, that is Python 3, select. Now again here we have a problem. So while we are doing port mapping, this is occupying our terminal. And if I close this terminal, then it will stop this command. So for that, we also want to run this SSH port forwarding command in the background. So the command will remain same, but here we will add one more flag, that is SSH -f. -f option will send this SSH command into the background. Okay, so if I run this command with the -f option and if I press enter, then as you can see, the command is running in the background and now I have full control of this terminal and I can execute other commands. So now let's go ahead and reload this. So as you can see, it's up and running. But what if you want to see that where is my process running of SSH, right? So it will be ps aux grep SSH. So here you should be able to see all the SSH process that is running. Okay, so basically it's this one. So here is our command SSH -f -i flask. Okay, this is running in background. Now if you want to stop this, then you simply kill this process and that's it. This is how you can execute or run your Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter server on your remote machine, and with the help of SSH port forwarding or the SSH tunneling technique, you can access the same application on your local machine without explicitly opening any sort of ports as a part of your security group. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. Now let's say you don't want to get involved in executing this complex commands. So there is an easy way to do this. So now let me first kill this process, that is this one. I will say kill followed by the process, and as you can see now we are disconnected. So the easiest way or the easy way to achieve this is via VS Code. Okay, so here I have this Visual Studio Code. You can also run Jupyter Notebook on EC2 via Visual Studio Code and access it on your local machine. So here we have installed SSH plugin, which will take care of the port forwarding and all that stuff, right? So let's do that as a part of this video. But if you want to learn about how to configure that plugin and everything, then please refer to my video on how to do remote development with Visual Studio Code on EC2 instance. Okay, so what we will need the public IP address of this EC2 instance. So let me copy this. Now going back to the Visual Studio Code, I will click on this green icon and I will say connect to host. I will select configure SSH host. I will open the config file and here I will replace the IP address. Okay, so here what I am defining a host that is with the name prod-vm, or I could say dev-vm. Here is my host name, that is the public IPv4 address of the remote machine, the user, that is Ubuntu by default, and then the identity file, which is nothing but the PEM file, which we used as an identity file to log in into the EC2 instance. Okay, now once this is configured, click on that green icon again, click on connect to host, select the host with which you want to connect. In my case, it's dev-vm, and as you can see, it's opening the remote connection. And we are into that system, that is SSH dev-vm. I'm going to open a folder that is home/ubuntu. Click on OK. I will say trust the authors. And here we are. So here we had untitled.ipynb where we had did import request. Here we have nohub.out, logs, pyenv, our virtual environment, and so on. So now as a next step, I'm going to kill the Jupyter server which is running on port 8181 on the remote machine. So I'm going to open the terminal from the VS Code. So this will open the remote machine terminal, that is Ubuntu at the rate private IP address. So let's check if it is still running or not. That is our Jupyter server. So I will say psaux grep 8181. So as you can see, this is the process that is running. That is Jupyter Lab --no browser, allow root, and on port 8181. So we are going to kill the process on this port. So I'm going to copy this. I will say kill space the process ID, enter. And now if I check, then we do not have anything that is running on this port. Okay. Now here, as I mentioned earlier, let's say you don't want to execute that, complex command, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can use this VS Code, connect it to your remote machine, activate your environment, that is source pyenv bin activate. Okay, here it is activated, and then simply run Jupyter -lab -no browser. Optionally, you can pass in the port on which you want to run this command. Let's not pass it from here. So simply we will say Jupyter Lab -no browser, and that's all. Press enter. Now the Jupyter is up and running. Jupyter Lab is up and running. Now by default it is running on port 8888 on the remote machine. It's not running on the local machine. But at the same time, if you click on this ports, right, then you should be able to see the auto forwarded port, that is the port 8888 on the remote machine is being forwarded to the local address, that is localhost :8888. So if I go ahead and copy this URL and try to load it on my browser, then I should be able to access Jupyter server or Jupyter Lab on my local machine. Here you need to enter the password that I have set. I'll say enter, and we are into the Jupyter Lab. So now as you can see, the Jupyter Lab is up and running on our localhost :8888 port. Okay, so this is how you can also do the port forwarding using Visual Studio Code, right? So this is kind of a less of a hassle that you need to go through. So similarly, you can run this command in background as well, or else you can open a new session of your terminal with the help of VS Code, right? So you can have multiple interactive sessions here to basically execute other commands with which you want to work with. Okay, now you might have a question. So right now we are kind of running it on HTTP, but what if you want to use HTTPS? So if you want to run the Jupyter Notebook on HTTPS, then I have done the separate video on the same using self-signed certificates, and the video link is in the video description. Okay, so guys, I hope you learned something new today, and that was all for this video. Until that time, if you want me to do tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below, and I will try my best to come up with the tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And see you next time.